There's an old image, a man running through a field, chasing a butterfly. Desperate, focused, determined. Every time he gets close, the butterfly darts away. And when he finally gives up, when he sits down, breathless, still, that butterfly lands gently on his shoulder. What if that's not just a metaphor? What if that's the truth about your life right now? You're chasing things: money, status, peace, love, validation, followers, a future you're convinced you can't live without, but every step forward seems to push it all further away. You're taught to hustle, to wake up earlier, to grind harder, to build a vision board and manifest your dream life, to repeat to yourself, I am successful, I am powerful, I am wealthy. But deep down, you still feel empty, you still feel tense, you still feel like it's never enough. And maybe that's because everything you're trying to manifest is running away from the version of you who's chasing. Let that sink in for a moment. You don't manifest what you chase. You manifest who you are when you're still. This is the contradiction no one talks about, because we've confused movement with meaning and obsession with power. We live in a culture that's addicted to action. If you're not constantly doing, posting, building, proving, you're told you're falling behind. Work harder, sleep less, speak louder. You're fed the idea that manifestation is just another form of conquest, another goal, another trophy, another box to check. But the Stoics, they knew better. Thousands of years ago, without algorithms or podcasts or morning routines, they found something we've lost. They didn't try to manifest their lives. They simply aligned with the nature of things. And by doing so, they became unshakable. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but began each morning alone, journaling by candlelight. Epictetus was born a slave, yet taught others that true power is found in how we respond, not in what we own. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, but practiced poverty to remind himself that the good life has nothing to do with luxury and everything to do with inner freedom. None of them were obsessed with attracting anything. They were obsessed with mastering one thing, themselves. Today we confuse stillness with laziness. We confuse contentment with weakness. And we've forgotten that the greatest manifestors in history weren't screaming their affirmations into the mirror. They were quiet, grounded, focused. They had detached, not from ambition, but from the outcome. They had let go, not out of apathy, but out of awareness. Because when you stop trying to force life to give you what you want, life begins to offer what you need. This is the paradox. The moment you stop needing something is often the moment it finds its way to you. The Stoics didn't say relax because they lacked goals. They said it because they understood this. A frantic mind cannot see clearly. A clenched hand cannot receive, and a restless soul repels what it desires most. So if you've been chasing, grinding, forcing, controlling, and it's not working, maybe it's time to stop. Because here's the secret they won't sell you. You don't need to shout at the universe to get what you want. You don't need to become more. You don't need to become anyone else. You just need to become still. Still enough to hear your own thoughts. Still enough to see things as they are. Still enough to know what really matters and what never did. Over the next 40 minutes, we're going to unpack this truth layer by layer. We'll look at what it means to stop chasing and start attracting. We'll learn why relaxation isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Why the Stoics weren't passive, but precise. Why the calmer you are, the more magnetic you become. So turn off your notifications, close the 20 tabs in your brain, and breathe, because the version of you who relaxes might just be the version the universe has been waiting to meet. The philosophy of relaxed power control. It's the illusion we've been taught to chase since childhood. Control your future, control your image, control your time, control your outcomes. But the Stoics, they started with a different question, a more honest one. What do I actually control? And what do I only think I control? Epictetus, born into slavery, had no status, no wealth, no choice in where he lived or how he was treated. But even then, he said something that would outlive every emperor. Some things are up to us, and some are not. Just 10 words. But those 10 words are a map out of hell. Because think about this. You can't control what people think of you. You can't control the economy. You can't control your past. You can't even fully control your body. Illness, aging, injury, they happen without permission. But you, Padud, can control how you respond. You can control your choices, your perspective, your actions, your character. And when you shift your energy away from what's outside your grasp and pour it into what's inside your influence, a strange thing happens. You stop fighting the current. You stop resisting life. You align with it. And in that alignment, you become powerful. Not because you conquered the world, but because you stopped letting the world conquer you. This is where calmness begins. When you realize that anxiety is often just your mind rehearsing battles it was never meant to fight. When you realize that stress is what fills the gap between what you wish you could control and what you actually can. The Stoics didn't preach calmness as some meditative aesthetic. They taught it as a logical outcome of seeing clearly. To align with nature, as they said, is to align with reality, to accept the flow of things, to stop resisting the river, and instead to swim with it, because when you're no longer trying to bend reality to your will, you're finally able to respond to it with skill. The paradox of manifestation. Now this is where things get interesting. We live in an age obsessed with manifestation. Books, podcasts, courses, TikToks, all repeating the same mantra. Think it, and you will attract it. Speak it into existence. Visualize it, and it's yours. And at first glance, it seems empowering. Why wouldn't you want to shape your future with your mind? But what if the desire itself was what's pushing it all away? That sentence cuts deeper than it first appears. Because most of us walk around with this subconscious equation. I don't have X, therefore I'm not enough. But if I get X, then I will be. And so we strive, we grip, we manifest. But all of it is rooted in lack. All of it is rooted in the belief that this moment isn't enough. So no matter what you attract, it won't satisfy you, because you're still stuck in the cycle of needing more to feel complete. The Stoics saw this clearly. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." They understood the paradox. You gain real power over life when you stop needing anything from it. That's not apathy, that's clarity, because there's a difference between wanting something and being owned by that want. There's a difference between pursuing your goals and letting your goals determine your peace. Stoicism doesn't teach you to give up on achievement. It teaches you to detach your self-worth from the result, to move from a place of grounded intention, not emotional compulsion. And from that calm comes clarity. And from that clarity comes power. Relaxation isn't weakness, it's intelligence. Because only a still mind can see the full board. Only a calm person can choose their move instead of reacting to someone else's. And when it comes to manifestation, this is the truth most people miss. You don't manifest what you repeat in the mirror. You manifest what your nervous system believes to be true. And your nervous system is only regulated when you are calm, not frantic, not over-caffeinated, not spiritually bypassing your fear by thinking positive. but genuinely at peace with yourself, with your pace, with your process. That peace is what makes room for things to arrive. So here's the question that sets the stage for everything that follows. Can you be still while life moves around you? Can you relax without giving up? Can you remain present without needing proof that something is working? Because if you can, you've already won, not because you've gained more, but because you've stopped giving your soul away to things that were never yours to begin with, breaking the addiction to struggle. You think you're tired because you worked all day, but you didn't. You were thinking all day, worrying, planning, comparing, overanalyzing, and that kind of mental labor isn't productive. It's exhausting. We've normalized anxiety as a default operating mode, not because we're weak, but because we've confused constant motion with meaning. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. About Seneca. Seneca understood something that modern science is only beginning to articulate. Your mind can manufacture its own suffering, and it's very good at it. You rehearse worst-case scenarios in your head, as if worrying about them now will protect you later. You mentally prepare for loss, rejection, failure, as if anticipation equals control. But all it really does is steal your peace before anything even happens. In our modern world, this tendency has evolved. Anxiety has become a badge of honor. We reward the appearance of effort, even when that effort leads nowhere. We scroll endlessly through hustle motivation videos, celebrating people who wake up at 4 a.m., take 17 calls, hit the gym twice, build 3 businesses, journal, meditate, and still feel behind. But what no one talks about is the cost, not just burnout, but disconnection from your body, from your presence, from the stillness required for real creation. You're working, but not creating, thinking, but not deciding, moving, but not advancing. This is the trap, the modern dopamine loop. You check 12 apps, open 17 tabs, refresh 10 platforms, and convince yourself you're doing something. But real work, real deep work, requires stillness. And that's exactly what most people are afraid of. Why? Because stillness forces you to feel. When there's no noise, you have to face what's under the noise. Your fears, your unmet expectations, your unprocessed failures. And so instead of facing those things, we keep moving, keep scrolling, keep optimizing, keep manifesting. But what if your biggest breakthrough was hidden behind the very silence you've been avoiding? Stillness equals manifestation. Engine. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome, at war, under pressure, surrounded by death and politics. But in the middle of all that chaos, he journaled, not to post it online, not to sell it, not to impress anyone, but to center himself, to find his still point in a world spinning wildly. That sentence alone is a revolution. Do less. Not because you're lazy, but because you're focused. Because you've finally stopped wasting your energy on things that don't move your life forward. This is the essence of Stoicism, and it's the engine of real manifestation. Stillness isn't emptiness, it's space. Space to listen, to observe, to act with precision instead of panic. Ryan Holiday calls it the key. Stillness is the key. Why? Because in stillness, you can actually hear yourself think. You can hear what you really want, not what social media convinced you to chase. And when your desire comes from clarity instead of insecurity, you don't need to force anything. You simply become ready for it. Most people believe manifestation is about wanting harder, about shouting your dreams into the universe with more intensity. But what if it's about becoming the kind of person who can hold those dreams without collapsing under them? Stillness isn't just preparation, it's transformation. Because the calmer you are, the stronger you become. The less noise you allow in, the more accurate your moves. That's not spiritual fluff, that's strategy. You've been trained to believe that peace comes after success. But what if it's the other way around? What if the version of you who is already calm, already still, already present, is the magnet, not the one who's chasing, but the one who's simply sitting still and letting the butterfly land, rewiring the nervous system to attract? You're not being chased, there's no war outside, no tiger in the room, and yet your heart is racing, your jaws tight, your breath shallow and clipped. What is that? That's your nervous system, stuck in a loop you didn't ask for, a loop you inherited from ancestors who lived in the wild. Back then, fight or flight kept us alive, but today, it keeps us from living. Here's the truth. Most people are trying to manifest from a threat state. Their bodies are tense, their breath is reactive, their minds are running worst-case simulations 24/7. And then they wonder, why aren't good things coming to me? Your body has learned to brace for life, to contract, to prepare for impact. But here's what nobody told you. You don't attract from survival. You attract from safety, from openness, from flow. Here's where we step into the science, the polyvagal theory. Developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, explains how our nervous system has more than just fight or flight. It has a whole third mode, the social, safe, connected state, called the ventral vagal. In this state, your body feels safe. Your brain is more creative. Your communication improves. You literally become magnetic, not just to ideas, but to people, opportunities, clarity. This isn't woo-woo, this is biology. When you breathe deeply, when your posture is open, when your eyes soften, you tell your nervous system, we're not in danger. And from that place, you stop acting from desperation. You stop reacting. You begin creating. The Stoics knew this, even without the language of science. They trained themselves to face life before it happened, to befriend discomfort. Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They would wake up and imagine every possible thing that could go wrong, so that if life ever took that path, they'd already been there, in their mind, calm, ready. And sometimes, just knowing you can handle the worst frees you to fully live the best. Seneca practiced voluntary discomfort. Wearing cheap clothes, eating bland meals, sleeping in rough conditions, not to punish himself, but to prove a point that he didn't need luxury, that peace wasn't found in comfort, but in control of his reactions. And once he detached from fear, nothing could hold power over him, not fame, not failure, not even death. Now compare that to us, always stimulated, always distracted, always trying to perform calm instead of practicing it. We don't need more stimulation. We need more nervous system literacy. Because until your body believes it's safe, no amount of affirmations will change your life. Some of the most powerful people in history weren't loud, weren't frantic, weren't chasing. They were calm. Steve Jobs used to take long walks in silence. Elon Musk, despite the chaos, is known for his detached, neutral demeanor under pressure. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai, once said, "The ultimate aim of martial arts is not having to use them." Alan Watts called it the yacht law of reversed effort. When you try to float, you sink, but when you try to sink, you float. It sounds paradoxical, but it isn't. You attract by not chasing. You rise by not clinging. You manifest by not needing. Because here's what life responds to: inner calm. The calm creator isn't passive. They're poised. They don't need to prove. They don't need to rush. They've built trust in themselves, in the process, in timing. They know the seed doesn't grow faster because you yell at it. It grows because it's planted in the right environment. And that environment is stillness. If you've been feeling this truth in your chest, if something in you knows that the constant chasing, the constant noise isn't the way, then maybe it's time to try something ancient, something quiet, something real. Maybe it's time to relax. Not because you're giving up, but because you're finally stepping into alignment. And if this voice, this space, this message is reminding you of what you already knew deep down, then take a breath and consider subscribing, not just to this channel, but to this way of being, because we're building something deeper here, a quiet revolution, and we'd love to have you in it. We often chase the future because we've never learned how to sit with the present, and the simplest tool to stop that chase is a pen. Not a flashy tool, not a complicated app, just a pen and a question. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, sat down and wrote to himself. He didn't write for fame. He didn't plan to publish it. He wrote to remind himself of what mattered, of who he wanted to be, of what was within his control and what was not. This was not journaling as therapy. It was journaling as training the mind to become calm, clear, and sovereign. Here's the truth. Most of your anxiety comes not from the world, but from your attachment to how the world should behave. So the Stoics journaled, not to record what happened, but to rehearse how they would respond, not to fantasize about outcomes, but to practice virtue. Modern self-help teaches you to visualize what you want. The Stoics taught you to visualize who you must become. There's a massive difference. One chases symbols, the other builds substance. You can picture the car, the followers, the lifestyle. But until you can picture courage under pressure, patience in discomfort, humility in success, you'll never be able to hold what you manifest. Try this. Morning pages. Before the world gets to you, get to yourself. Ask, what do I fear today? What would courage look like? What is mine to control? Evening reflections. When the noise fades, write, where did I act from ego? Where was I reactive? What can I release before sleep? No judgment, no performance, just gentle recalibration. That's journaling, the Stoic way. Let's talk about the paradox no one believes until they experience it. The less you need, the more you attract. We've been taught to associate abundance with accumulation, more stuff, more goals, more recognition, but the Stoics flip that completely. He is richest who is content with the least. That's not poetry. That's economic strategy. Because when you're content, you're calm. When you're calm, you're clear. And when you're clear, you're dangerous. Not in a violent way, in a focused way, in a way that makes life bend toward you. Simplicity is not sacrifice. Simplicity is sovereignty. It's the decision to live deliberately, to say no so you can say yes with power. This might look like living below your means, digital minimalism, slow living, not because you can't afford more, but because you no longer need more to feel whole. When you detach from symbols, you free yourself to attract substance. The truth is, the universe doesn't reward what you say you want. It reflects who you are when you no longer need it. And that version of you, the one who's still satisfied and focused, is a magnet for everything you once chased. Voluntary simplicity isn't about denying life. It's about choosing life, a life where your energy isn't scattered, your values aren't sold, your presence isn't buried. And ironically, it's from this space of radical sufficiency that everything begins to come to you. You've probably felt this truth before. In a quiet morning, in a walk with no destination, in a moment where you wanted nothing and somehow felt like you had everything. That was alignment. That was attraction. That was you, tuned in to the way life really works. If you've made it this far, you already feel the shift. You're not watching this by accident. You're remembering something deeper than words. So stay with us, because in the next section we go even deeper into letting go without giving up. Most people think power comes from control, control of your day, control of your money, control of your future. But the Stoics discovered something much deeper and infinitely rarer. Power doesn't come from control. It comes from acceptance. Amor fati. It means love your fate. Not tolerate it, not endure it, love it. Every setback, every heartbreak, every twist you didn't plan for. Because what if none of it was working against you? What if it was all placement? Nietzsche echoed this ancient wisdom centuries later. To want nothing to be different, not even your worst days. That is the mindset of the unbreakable. But here's the mistake most people make. They hear acceptance and think it means giving up, resigning. No, acceptance is not passivity, it's partnership. It's standing in the fire and saying, this too belongs to me. Let me tell you a story. Her name is Maya. She spent 5 years climbing the ladder at a marketing firm. Top performer, great pay, no time. Then one afternoon, a 10-minute Zoom call, no severance, no mercy, just, we're restructuring. She cried. Of course she did. But then, she did something most people never do. She sat still and asked, what is life freeing me from? That question changed her life. Within 6 months, she had built her own brand, a tiny one, but it was hers. She worked less, laughed more, got her time back, and never, ever chased a job again. She didn't fight the wave, she surfed it. That's amor fati. The same mindset echoed in Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Frankl lost everything, his family, his home, his status. But he found something the Nazis could never touch: meaning. He turned suffering into philosophy, and that philosophy became healing for millions. Amor fati isn't poetic, it's practical, because it gives you power in situations where you have none. Even today, you hear this echo. Jocko Willink, retired Navy SEAL. When things go wrong, he has one response: good. Lost your job? Good. Time to learn. Failed a launch? Good. Now you know what doesn't work. Betrayed? Good. Now you're free to move with clarity. That isn't delusion, that's discipline of mind. It's not just about thinking positive, it's about seeing that everything life throws at you can be used. That's the power of acceptance, not giving up on life, but saying yes to it, even when it says no to you. Detachment as a superpower. If you kiss your child, say to yourself, tomorrow you may die. To the modern ear, that sounds morbid, even cruel. But it wasn't. It was honest, and it was freeing. Because once you accept that everything is borrowed, you stop clinging, you start cherishing, and you start showing up fully. Most people suffer more from attachment than from loss. They cling to how it should be, to what they deserve, to who should have stayed. But detachment isn't apathy. It's not coldness. It's choosing not to tie your peace to outcomes you don't control. Because when you do that, you become free. There's a man I knew. Let's call him Elijah. He built a startup from nothing, worked 90-hour weeks, raised millions, and then his co-founder betrayed him. Took the IP, the clients, everything, gone. He almost lost his mind until he walked away. Not because he was weak, but because he realized you can't cling to ashes. He let go, not of ambition, but of obsession. He rebuilt, this time smaller, more ethical, more sustainable. And most importantly, he wasn't afraid to lose again. Because when you've let go once, you stop fearing endings. Detachment isn't about rejecting life. It's about participating in life without being owned by it. When you release your grip, things flow back to you, not because you forced them, but because you stopped blocking them with fear. So try this. Love what is. Don't wait to appreciate it when it's gone. Let go of what's leaving. If it's meant for you, it will return stronger. If it's not, you've just made space for something better. That is detachment, and it is the ultimate freedom. The Stoic doesn't push the river. They have flow with it. They don't demand certainty. They prepare for anything, and in doing so, they become unstoppable. Daily Stoic habits to stay relaxed and powerful. You want to stay powerful? Learn to be quiet. The world is loud. Everyone wants to be heard, followed, praised. But the Stoic doesn't compete for noise. He creates strength in silence, because silence isn't absence, it's presence. Journaling meditation. Each morning, Marcus Aurelius sat down and wrote, not to post, not to impress, but to remind himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. His journal wasn't a performance. It was a recalibration, a clearing of the fog. Today, you're flooded with information. 300 notifications before noon. Opinions, distractions, outrage. The antidote? Sit, write, ask. What is truly essential today? What desire is making me restless? What if I released it? Meditation is the same, not to become peaceful, but to see clearly. You don't meditate to feel good, you meditate to build awareness. And awareness builds power. Walking, cold, breath. The Stoics believed the body and mind weren't separate. To govern one, you must train the other. Daily walking, not as exercise, but as grounding. No phone, no podcast, just footsteps and thought. It's the simplest Stoic ritual, yet one of the most powerful. Cold showers, voluntary discomfort, a daily message to your nervous system. You are not fragile. And breath work? That's how you train the gateway between chaos and clarity. The breath is the steering wheel of the nervous system, and every Stoic knew this without saying it. Before battles, before speeches, before hard choices. Breathe. Most people multitask because they're afraid of stillness. They fill their schedule to avoid facing themselves. But the Stoic? He does one thing, slowly. Well, with presence. When you walk, you walk. When you speak, you speak. When you eat, you eat. And that's why his actions hold weight. The power of scheduled nothingness. Now listen carefully. This might be the most radical idea of all. Scheduled to do nothing. Not because you're lazy, but because you're sovereign. Imagine blocking off an hour each day, phone off. No agenda, no stimulation, just existence. This isn't a luxury, it's survival. It's where all the best ideas live. It's how you stop reacting and start leading. Stillness isn't optional anymore. It's a requirement for power. Silence is a weapon. Not the kind that wounds, the kind that protects. In a world addicted to noise, the person who can remain quiet holds all the power. The Stoic Gray Rock Method. Ever heard of gray rocking? It means becoming unreactive, emotionally solid, unshakable. The Stoics practice this without needing a name for it. Seneca wrote, "A wise man is content with himself." That means you don't owe the world your emotions. You don't need to defend your name in every comment thread. You don't need to match energy. You need to protect yours. Impatience is the language of the weak. It says, I don't trust time. I need results now. I don't believe I'm enough without attention. But patience? That's strategy. The Stoic waits, not passively, but like a lion in tall grass, moving when it's time, resting when it's wise. Here's a truth no one tells you. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove your ambition or advertise your pain. Silence makes people wonder. Wonder creates gravity, and gravity is influence. So do less, say less, want less, and watch how life begins to bend around you. Because stillness is not passive, stillness is magnetic. There's a moment you reach, not after reading 100 books, not after journaling for 30 days, but after letting go of the final thing you thought you needed. It's subtle. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets or fireworks. It arrives in silence, like a whisper from the soul. And in that moment you realize the things you've been chasing, the dreams you kept trying to force into being, the future you kept trying to bend into shape, none of it ever required struggle. It just required alignment. There's a story you should hear, not from a philosopher, not from a guru, but from a man most of the world forgot. He was once a millionaire, stock options, cars, corner office. But stress ruled his life. Every win had to be bigger than the last. He couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe. He lost it all in the 2008 crash. House, job, status, and for 2 years, he did nothing. Not out of choice, but because he had no choice. The market didn't want him. The world didn't need him. He sat alone for months. And then something changed. He didn't find a new strategy. He didn't stumble into a new opportunity. He just stopped resisting. He accepted the quiet. He leaned into the stillness. And in that stillness, ideas returned. Joy returned. And slowly, so did abundance. But not because he chased it, because he let go of needing it. That's the manifestor's mindset. It isn't about vision boards or obsessive scripting. It isn't about trying harder or being better or grinding through pain. It's about this. You will manifest everything you want the moment you no longer need any of it. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally understood. You are already complete. And complete things don't chase, they attract. If this resonated with you, if something deep inside you just clicked, if a part of you finally felt seen, then don't just consume this. Live it. And stay centered in a chaotic world by subscribing. This isn't just a channel, it's a reminder, a space for the calm ones, the silent builders, the people who lead not with noise, but with gravity. Comment below. I will remain calm no matter what. Say it aloud if you have to, because words repeated become beliefs, and beliefs shape outcomes. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius.